Across the Park podcast is proud to be sponsored by Globe Gas and Heating. For the best kitchen and bathroom renovations, boiler servicing and repair, and central and underfloor heating in the Northwest, head over to globecentralheating.com and quote Across the Park for a free quote.
Hello, welcome to episode 24 of Across the Park podcast, season 23-24. Myself, Ian Mills, at the amazing Pod Cafe studios, as only. No Gary this week. He's in one of his many holiday homes. Can't keep track of where he is. Doing a bit of business off the books, I imagine, as well, knowing Gary. But I'm delighted to be joined by friend of the show, Colin Flood. Colin, thanks for coming back to the podcast. First of all, how are you doing, lad?
Very good, yeah. All good, yeah.
And you brought a couple of treats for us. Some of this.
Certainly have, yeah. The
Arctic Peak gear.
Is back, yeah. So the little fella, obviously, Al Jose, he's still doing the Arctic Peak jumpers, hoodies, t-shirts. And again, we're just on the self-promotion trail for him. So he's doing fantastic with it. I mean, he's got some new brands, new designs, which you can see here. But again, it's just supporting him, encouraging him. You know, the things he's learning from it, and we're learning from it as parents as well. It's brilliant.
There's a couple of big names rocking this stuff, isn't there, as well?
Yeah,
ex-Reds, but we won't hold that against them.
Yeah, and we won't, yeah. But it's just all it's all to help him better understand what he wants to do with himself and what he's developing from that. He's got, like you're saying, like some ex-Reds, but you had some up-and-coming players like Sean McGurk, who's helping him out, just promote his brand a little bit. And they've been brilliant with him. They've been fantastic. And like I say, he's grown his following. He's grown his bank balance as well along the way. And we're just happy to support him. Yeah.
So it's over on Instagram. It's Arctic Peak 23, Arctic Peak 23 on Instagram. The description will be in below on YouTube as well. Get over there. Some really good gear, caps, hoodies, and stuff. And I imagine it's only going to get busier and bigger. Our podcast are proud to support Arctic Peak. Col, we've got to talk about the news that broke on Monday. We were talking about when it was going to break, when are we going to hear. It's taken so long. Even Jamie Carragher, I think on Monday Night Football 2 weeks ago, was sympathising with Evertonians, Luton fans, teams around, not knowing where they are. We finally had some clarification. Full stop. Everton got 4 points back. It leaves Everton with a 6-point deduction. When that news broke, how did you react? What was your instant reaction to it?
Well, I'm disappointed. Because to be honest with you, I don't think we should have got any points, if I'm honest with you. Considering, you know, if you look in relation to how you compare what we've been obviously done for compared to other teams previously, and some to go in the future. I didn't think it warranted the points deduction. Maybe a fine, you know, or maybe some sort of recruitment, something along the lines of, you know, pause and recruitments, you know, but it is what it is. I think the whole situation's a mess, isn't it? You know, I think everyone looking from the outside in had no clarity on it whatsoever. I think it to come unannounced, you know, was a bit disappointing as well. It's left everyone in suspense a little bit again. But I think that's just typical of the way they've handled the process from start to finish. I think doing stuff like this mid-season as well doesn't help. And I just think the agenda behind it, for me, just leaves more questions than answers. I just think the way they've set the process up to do stuff mid-season, you know, even start of the season, this stuff should be done before the season kicks off.
It doesn't have to take this long. That's the thing. It doesn't have to. There's ways and means of saying we're going to publicise the new formula or the new rules. Should you breach, then we will deal with it within 7 days.
Yeah.
You have to file your accounts by a certain point. It doesn't have to take this long. We got charged initially in March 23. 11 months it took for us to clarify what the punishment is.
Yeah. I just again the whole process for me was just a farce really from start to finish. It just the way they've dealt with Everton, the way the media, the ban block, whatever you want to call it, they haven't really covered it much from both sides for me. I think that's left fans a little bit disgruntled. I mean, we can talk as Evertonians about it and say, you know, we don't like it and we haven't enjoyed the last few months, you know, being sort of in that suspense of, I think, you know, Patrick Boyle mentions it brilliant in his article in The Athletic. It's a vulnerable breathing space. You know, at the minute, we're still, you know, even though we've been deducted the 6 points, given 4 points back, we're still hanging the which we'll come to shortly, the other points deduction. But that's the process starting all again. There's no clarity on it. It's like, well, look, we dealt with here by this panel of people, etc. And it just seems to me like I've got fed up with it, Mills, to be honest with you. It is what it is. I think we've just got to concentrate on ourselves, get as many points on the board, and then look forward. Because I think the whole process, as I said before, is just a mess, absolute mess.
It didn't really, in a weird way. Even, look, as Evertonians, we're in a much better position Wednesday than we were Monday morning. I get that. And a part of me is appreciative of we're in a better position. I can't celebrate that. For one, I'm the same as you. I don't know how, without teaching everyone to suck eggs here, our non-sporting breach leads to supporters in the football team being punished. I don't get that, so I don't think there should have been anything. But also, we've got this second charge hanging over us, which we'll move on to. So it doesn't even allow full clarity. And now it feels to me, and I put this on our socials as a post, this feels like the second rounds of a 5-round boxing fight to me. It's like, all right, well, we've got something in this, or the third rounds, if you will. We've got something back. That wasn't a bad round, that. Still getting knocked out in the next one. There's more to come. And this second charge, you could be the opposite to me, and feel free to say if you are, but I just can't really get my head around another one coming in the same season.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no accountants, the way they forecast the figures and the finances and stuff, but I just think, to put something again in the discretion of a commission, baffles me. It almost, that saying it, the blind leading the blind in certain ways, but I just think it's farcical. I've gone past the point of frustration with it, and they'll do what they need to do, as a commissioning body. But to put two separate commission groups in that might come up with two completely different ways of looking at it, based on, obviously they've now got a parameter to work on, 6-point deduction for overspending. Well, one might be, well, what happens if one's slightly over and the other one's considerably over? So they look at it slightly different and give them more points. For me, I blame it. My fingers point at the Premier League, and the auditing committee around that, to say, well, you should never have let a club get in that place if you're regularly, supporting clubs. And a key word there is supporting, not actually just leaving them to their own discretion. Because, if you were filing your own accounts with HMRC at the end of the year, you're going to want support, aren't you, before 100%. You put them in. So the flag should have been raised, but again, running back over old ground, some of the things that were discarded in the last year, and to the normal person, for me, would be like, well, I just can't understand why that is. It just baffles me, and that's why I'm just disgruntled a little bit with losing 6 points because of that, because clearly to the common person, it's unfair. Yeah,
and even the appeal, I've read the appeal outcome in full, and what the appeal says in relation to Player X, we all know who that is, but Player X, and the suspension of the club sponsors, what the appeal basically said is any time a club go into an arrangement with a player or a sponsor, there's risk, whether it be injury or the sponsor goes bankrupt, there's considerable risk, so they couldn't uphold our mitigation because of that. Now, there's probably a bit of a cynic in me that if I was on that committee, I'd maybe be mindful to say, okay, I get it, but when you're talking about football fans being affected and a gang of 11, 12, 13, 14 players every Saturday trying to do their best being affected, I don't think any good has come out of this. What good does a football club fighting its governing body do? Doesn't do anyone any good, doesn't Absolutely do the Premier League any good, the football club any good. Fans have lost trust in the whole thing. We're about to go through it again. Yeah. Knackered.
And I think, the majority of fans that I sit around in the grounds, it's just like Groundhog Day, isn't it? Yeah. And no one's any clearer.
And it felt like that against Palace, didn't it, in the ground?
Absolutely, yeah. Subdued, you know what I mean? And
because I think we were waiting for it to come out, weren't we? And it was almost like, it felt almost to me like the football match was secondary at a football match.
Get the match over, and then
this is the lesson
fully expecting it to come as soon as the game finished, so there was no protests, nothing towards the Premier League. But you're right, the relationship's tarnished now. I think if you ask most Evertonians now, as much as we wouldn't want it, as a club to drop down in the champion, you've got that bitterness around the Premier League now, and you feel it walking and booing the anthem before the game and stuff like that. You shouldn't really want that.
You're part of something that you don't trust. you don't believe in,
yeah.
you don't think that that's going to do the best for you. I think, as an Evertonian, speaking myself, I'm looking over my shoulder going, like, if we so much as cough on the wrong person here, are they going to come down on us because of what's happened? They've gone into an appeal process, been told they were wrong. They're not going to like the licks they've just got, and that does no one any good. Just to close it and move on to Brighton. I just think everybody's going to learn from this. Now, whether that be Everton included and Evertonians included, I don't know. We've got to find a way that this can't keep happening. If we breach again, and the Premier League are trying to punish you, and you're in essence telling them they're wrong, and you're at loggerheads while still performing in that league, and the fans have just lost trust and lost love. Yeah. I've heard fans, and you might have mates yourself, just this entire scenario is making them fall out of love with the game. We've got to learn from it, haven't we?
Massively, and I think to flip it the other way, I'll touch on it shortly, is like we've got to kind of, as a fan base, come together more. Like we did the run-in last season. You know, no one wants to do a bus walk-in for a relegation battle again. We want to do it because we're trying to get into Europe and the adverse effect of that, results of that, sorry. But I think fans now just need to kind of move forward with it and look ahead, you know, and kind of get behind the team and get behind the club, because we can see, you know, the club and the team are kind of coming together a little bit more. You can see it, and I honestly believe the Premier League seen their opportunity with the club, how much of a disarray it was in upstairs, and they thought, well, you know, this is the opportunity to kind of make an example of a club, to test the rules and the parameters we can work within. And you know, at the start of this process, I had no confidence in the club managing it and looking after themselves, but we seem to have stabilised as a club a bit more now, and the manager seems to have done that. But there's a lot more work to do. Yeah,
a lot more. And we've got the 777 takeover that's just still in abeyance. That you know, there's rumours today that they're now going to meet the Premier League and have this face-to-face of... You know, we've seen Richard Masters at the when he was in Commons, and he was alluding to he's not quite satisfied with what 7-7 is saying. It seems today that 777 appeared off with the whole thing. There's rumours that there's another group waiting to come in. And again, all these things are happening at the football club, and it's just, I think everyone's exhausted with it. But
they are, Mills, but I mean, you've got to look at the Premier League. It's out of Everton's hands, isn't it? Everton want to sell a club. The current owner wants to sell a club. They can't do that unless the Premier League make a decision to do that. If they say no on these grounds, sort it out by this time, then we've got some clarity to work towards, haven't we? You know, well, that's what it looks like. But there's nothing really coming back from them other than we're not satisfied. Well, satisfied with what? Yeah. You know, tell us, show us, you know what I mean? Because at the minute, we're not sure whether we're going to be owned by 777 or someone else, and we're moving into a new stadium, you know, in the next season or so. The fans want to know where they're going with the club.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you're spot on. I think clarity on a number of things is needed. One thing I do think we've got clarity on is I think on the football pitch we're a lot better than what we've been in recent years. Now I'll get attacked for that, and some of our socials are alluding to fans who are unhappy, and that's fair. I get that, but the Brighton result for me, if Everton equalise in the 94th minute and the fans go to the away end, they get lauded off as heroes. And that's not saying any fan's right or wrong for thinking differently. I'm just saying, in my opinion, a draw is a good result. Would you go along with that?
Absolutely. They played at home. I think their record stands at like 6 wins, 6 draws, 1 loss. You know, going away from home, it's always about picking points up, whether that's the 1 or the 3. Look, the performance isn't always pretty. It hasn't been all season, but we've got points through it. So for me, a last minute conceding, last minute goals is not something you want to see. You know what I mean? And the emotion kicks in then about how it's frustration more than anything else. But for me, if you were to say before the game, would you take a point? Absolutely, 100%. Brighton are a difficult side to play against, and they break you down. And the fact that Everton, you know, it's been a cross in the last, you know, minute of the game that's you know, conceded a goal. I think you've just got to kind of take that on the chin and move forward and go, well, look, you know, there's other teams who've played them recently and their own form's pretty good. Yeah. You know, they either win or draw. I think it's a good point for me.
I agree. And look, we done it to Tottenham, didn't we? We got a late equaliser at home to Tottenham. And the game ends differently. I get the fact that we've been so close. And what I do get, and I'll bring some social comments in, is I do get the substitution of Decore for Ashley Young for me is something that I will say the manager was probably wrong for that. I understand looking at Ashley Young, and Ashley Young made a really good tackle, didn't he, in the area. So if that happens and you win 1-0, the manager's lauded. Hasn't quite happened. I just think the one negative I've got of that performance really is at 1-0 and at 10 men we treated it as if it was 11 men. We still looked fearful of what might come, and maybe it just took the manager to look, if Takeover needs to come off, I'm not saying it might not have been tactical, put Lewis Dobbin on the halfway line and make him chase every goal kick into the corner. I just think we could have done things a little bit differently. I just think his first reaction sometimes is cautious.
I think I've mentioned it before on the show. He's very similar to Moyes in that way, in how he sets it up. He didn't really change much. He had a lot of faith in the players he had. I think what Sean Dyche has probably shown me over the previous 10 or 12 games is there's times where he's gone to a front and he's tried to come out of that plan that he's got. But that group of players he's found a system that fits them. And when they come out of it, they really struggle. Watching Godfrey at right back as an attacking full back is non-existent. But as a defending full back, he's done well. Whereas you've got the flip side with Patterson. When he's played Patterson, he's exploited going backwards, but he contributes more going forward. I think the Takeover one, I think we probably... There's one thing I'll give Dyche credit for. He's not throwing players back in like previous managers have, and we've ended up with the same issues with fitness and fitness. And I think what he's looked at, and he's managed Calvert-Lewin's minutes, for me, a lot more better than what other previous managers done. He's getting them to certain points of the game where he's then having to trust other players. And I just think it's a process of trust. There was definitely other players on the bench who I thought they could offer us more. We are a man up here, but it highlighted something with the group for me. Possessionally, we're not the best, so we're better at sitting in. And then when we've got to come out and counter-attack, there's a fair point there for Dobbs, but I think he recognised that more experience coming on for someone who's building minutes up was probably a better option than actually going chasing the game when we're already 1-0.
No, and if it works, we're sitting here saying it was brilliant. We're saying Brighton didn't get near our goal. Yes, they had a lot of the ball, but we managed the game out. And it flips on its head, doesn't it, when it doesn't work? When you take that gamble, you look at your subs, you win, and it doesn't work. Like on Twitter, I don't know if you've seen it, but this is immediately after the game. We got a couple of tweets, and I've just picked two out. And the sort of the conflicting. So the first one is Danny, and he's put, look, we don't have to like every decision that Sean Dyche makes, but my God, we're going over the top here, aren't we? He's took on the worst job in the Premier League. Don't forget, this season is a write-off. This season is about nothing more than survival. Get off the manager's back. And then we've got Sean on Twitter who says Saturday was the first non-set-piece goal in 10 games. Sorry, that's not good enough. And me saying so is well within my rights.
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone's entitled to their opinion, but if you roll back, like the first message said, even let's say 10, 12 games ago, if you're predicting results further forwards, regardless of it being a last minute or a first minute goal or last minute of the first half, you would take a point against Brighton.
Yep.
100%. We don't have to like every decision the manager makes, but there's one thing you've got to give him credit for, and I think it was the preview for the Brentford game, I said, look, he's very David Moyes-esque with substitutions, and now I get what it is that he's doing with them. He either doesn't trust the substitutions, or he doesn't want to leave the rest, the midfield or the back line exposed, because that's when we do concede goals. And I think we've just got to give him a little bit of credit, because what he's done is he's made us solid. He's made us more organised. We look harder to break down, where previously we were probably, we were like Sheffield United and Burnley are now, quite easy to score against from set pieces and breaking down. And Brighton exposed us previously at a season at home, where every time we come out and press them, bang, they were in. They nearly scored from it.
4-1 wasn't it under Lampard?
They destroyed us, but you could argue both. I think the second message, just raw emotion, walking out the game, conceding the last minute, isn't nice. It's not a nice feeling, and once you probably give it a day or two to think about it, the bigger picture, a point on the board, it is a good way to look at it. And a performance is a performance. Tottenham, you've highlighted it there, got battered all game, outplayed, outmoved. stayed in the shape, created some chances, scored a last-minute goal. So we've worked out, great results.
Yeah.
At home, really, we want the 3 points.
No, I agree. And look, Julia Bowles, journalist, friend of the show, she's highlighted that she's asked Sean Dyche directly. What Julia does, not what you've seen on Twitter, is when she goes to the press conferences, she puts a tweet out and says, does anybody want me to ask anything? And she's really good in doing that. And one of the questions she once did ask was, your substitution seem late. You don't seem as reactive to things happening early against you. And what he said is, I work on this with this team and this setup all week, not giving up in 45 minutes on them. Mm-hmm. That's the team for 90 minutes, unless it gets to a point where I then feel differently. But I think what he's pointing at there is he's got a lot of trust in the 11. And he doesn't want to, you've said their shape, he doesn't want to change that shape or change that personnel because they've worked all week on that fixture. Yeah. So you can understand a little bit. I can get the frustration. I'm a Park End are. I'm like that, it doesn't go right. And I get it. I'm as frustrated as anyone when I'm at a game and I'm shouting for Dan Juma, I'm shouting for Chimiti and it doesn't happen. I get it. When I take that emotion out of it, I can sort of understand what he's saying.
Oh, absolutely, because I think one of his first things coming in was to organise the group to make them more competitive. Yeah. And I think one of the things that on the top of his list would have been, we can see goals easily, so what are we going to do to stop that? And that might mean limiting certain things that we do as a team to stop that happening. So it might be, holding the shape, maybe not coming out as much, playing counter-attacking football, set pieces, and stop conceding from set pieces and corners alike, And then there's other little things that niggle away at me, throw-ins. We just don't seem to have a plan of throw-ins. But you've got to be realistic with this manager. He's building it. So maybe he hasn't got the right personnel. I know it sounds ridiculous to say, to work a throw-in routine. But if they come out of a certain shape in a certain area, again, before he come in, we were really easy to break down.
Yeah.
So you can understand the confidence in the players. Why come out of something that's working to kind of change it? It's getting results. It's not pretty, but it's getting results. I think he's got a long way to go with us as a group, as a club and as a group of players. But I'd like to see 1 or 2 more players added in because, as of the previous conversation, we haven't been able to strengthen the squad, and you can't rely on youth players because we've been religiously, guilty of bringing young players in like Dobbs and ruining them because it may be too much of an atmosphere at Goodison sometimes, too much negativity around it. And Barkley's a great example of that. I'd love to see Ross come back at the start of the season. But, we as a fan base, are we patient enough? And I think we've just got to rein it back in a bit more and say, look, we asked for stability. I think we've got it.
I agree, yeah.
We've asked for some, stability where, a bit more passion in the game. I think we're starting to see bits of that. But he's got to get the right players in to do that. So it's not like a magic wand he's got. And one of the players for me he's transformed is Mikalenko. Looks like a completely different player to me. He can defend now.
But he could always defend, but if you remember, Lampard dropped him for John Joe Kenny because John Joe Kenny could get forward more. Lampard's always wanted more attacking
fullbacks,
and I think you're right in what you're saying with Mikalenko. I think Dyche has concentrated on what are you good at? How can this team get the best of your attributes? That's a prime example, isn't it?
Yeah, and I the one time I've seen Everton slightly more possession based or better in possession was when Gomez played as a 10 at Tottenham.
Yeah, he played
we seem to get through the line quicker with Garner, and when you've got confidence in firing the ball into someone who's going to hold it and move it, Dukes doesn't do that well enough. He wants to break things down. I mean, it's like bouncing a ball off a wall sometimes with him, but he's good at the things like, you're saying before, like breaking the play down. He's good at getting on the end of things, but if you want him to keep the ball, you may as well make a substitution every time he gets on the ball. But I think you're right in saying he's concentrated on the strengths of the player and said, like, well, how do we mould that into how we want to play moving forward? Because I'm sure Sean Dyche, even it'd be unfair to measure him on like Burnley, because if you watch some of the Burnley games when he was in charge there, I remember him coming to Goodison, he kept the ball better than what we do. He just obviously has got that group together to function in a way that's effective, or it can be as effective as it can be. And then anyone who's coming in has to get to the level that those lads are playing at, whether that's, technically, tactically, And I still think there's a few who've got a lot to learn. Dan Juma's got a lot to learn, because going back the other way, he leaves us exposed, whereas the other wingers don't. But they have to give away a bit more attacking freedom in the game.
Yeah, look, I do feel safer with this manager than I have done the previous two. The previous two were Lampard and Benitez, and throughout their tenures, I was thinking we're in trouble. Even when Benitez started well, I was thinking this is a recipe for chaos. This is going to go tits up, and it did. I do feel safer. I do understand, and I also agree with wanting at times nicer on the eye. Can we go and beg someone to do a great goal and have that moment? We haven't got any players really. Me and Gary spoke about this last week. We don't seem to have any players that moment of magic. There's no one in that team really who I think 25 yards out, hit it. McNeil to a push. I know Jack Harrison scored a good goal on his debut against Bournemouth, and I would like to add that to it, but at this moment in March or end of February 2024, and Everton are outside the relegation zone, and it looks like pending another punishment will be okay. That for me, I'm happy with that, and it's just getting through this season now. And there's a question I'll get at the end on socials about maybe how we do expand. Before we get to the socials, just to stick on, we're talking there that the manager maybe found a system. I think I've noticed he's got a system, and it's start Lewin and end with Beto. Now that seems to be, he thinks Calvert-Lewin is better to maybe implement the game plan, and then Beto to finish the game. For whatever reason, he doesn't trust Beto at the start, because there's no other reason that a striker who's not scored in 20 games would continue to start games unless the manager trusts him. And there's no other reason a striker like Beto would come on unless the manager trusts him. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing he's got
absolutely,
that style with them?
His game plan for me is down the 70-minute mark every time for Calvert-Lewin. And I think what he's trying to do is miss the midfielders out completely, be direct and play off them. It's a kind of basic way of approaching it. But I think as the game stretches, maybe if we want to offer a different type of pass, or one in behind rather than up to Calvert-Lewin, that's when he tries to change it a little bit. I mean, look, it'll be more predictable as the games go. Teams will know how to defend against it. But I think when he's tried with the two of them up front, for me, it just doesn't work. No, it just, they're completely, it's as if they've never played football together. Never mind football in general, but they make the same run. Yeah. But one comes slightly shorter than the other. One wants a ball in behind, the other one wants the ball up, holding it up. But if you notice as well, his midfielders rotate slightly different when the strikers come off. Yeah. So we don't play with Beto. We play more of a holding role than a supporting role with Dukes. And I've noticed that little change as well. One of the disappointing things for me, just as consistently with it, is the crossing. The crossing of the ball, the set pieces. That's got to improve massively. Because we get into some great areas. Jack Harrison done it against Palace. Got into some great areas, but delayed the cross. And I'm thinking, you've lost the opportunity to get the defender on the back foot there, facing his goal. Play to Calvert-Lewin's strength, getting the cross in early. I'd like to see a few more crosses in early. Add that into the game.
Michalenko, with the chance that Lewis Dunk headed over the bar. If you recall, that was a long ball from Tarkowski to Michalenko. Touch, cross. It took about 3 seconds, and it was one of the best chances of the game because it was quick.
Yeah. And I think that quick diagonal is something we're seeing it a lot. Yeah. Quality might not be there with them all, but we are where we are with that. But that's his game plan. But if you watch the game, he limits the amount of mistakes on the ball in the midfield area, and plays more of a support. It's a counter attack style of play, and it works sometimes. Teams who adapt differently. Obviously, there's teams out there playing different ways, but for us, that's the most effective way of playing with that group at the minute, until he sees something different with the players. But we can't always blame him. The players have got to step up within the game and say, well, look, they've got to try certain things. Like I say, the Tottenham game for me was a good opening to see how we played with a ball playing number 10, playing into him. And we created a lot more in between the lines. Yeah. And I'm not sure where he's up to with his injury at the moment, Gomez, but he'll offer him something different. And I'd like to see him with Beto and see something slightly different.
Yeah, it's not a bad shout that actually. I think that might get possibility even to end games with that combination. Yeah. I think the one last point I want to get to really before we leave the Brighton game is the commentator said, or the co-commentator said on Saturday, it's not like Everton to be playing out from the back. And I tweaked it, I didn't quite get that. So I watched it. For me, both teams played out from the back, But it was very, very, very different. I think Brighton were playing out from the back, and their attack was starting from the back. We were trying to draw them in. We were playing there as if to say, break your shape. And that Tarkowski, Michalenko, almost Calvert-Lewin chance, if you notice, was because we were just knocking it round and it broke their shape. And things like that, the little detail, I think is what the manager's doing well.
That just comes down to style, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and his understanding of what he's got in terms of players. I mean, I'm beyond that point. I mean, people will cry out for playing out from the back, but we've done that through Lampard conceded. Put ourselves under pressure.
Yeah.
They haven't got the players to do it, or they haven't got the confidence to play into midfielders. So his game plan, like you're saying, was just draw them out to drop that little bit higher, and play the diagonal.
Yeah.
Whereas if you play, a high press against Brighton, you're going to get picked off.
No.
Because the movement's just going to kill you. So you're not going to keep everyone happy. And the commentators' comments there around, not like Everton, building from the back, so to speak. Well, that'll only really work for 2 or 3 teams in the league. When another team comes out, you should be like, well, it should be more, again, it's a negative way of looking at it, isn't it? It should be like, well, they're building a bit of confidence. It's
Exactly.
more like Everton.
Yeah.
It's more like the way we want to see our teams play. Being on the ball rather than banging it forward and playing off a striker all the time. But I don't read too much into the Mills, to tell you the truth. Those types of comments, but I understand what he means. It's different, but fair play to the players, and the manager to recognise that's one way of getting them. They've probably seen that through other games. But if you roll back a couple of weeks and watch Sheffield United trying to play out from the back against them, you'll understand why it's a risky way of doing things.
Yeah, look, it wasn't pretty, but me and Colin have decided it's a good point for Everton. I think the manager, in my opinion, probably playing checkers and when someone else is playing chess on Saturday, and it's a good point for Everton. When the season ends, I do think we'll look back at the Brighton game. Of course, it wasn't the 5-1 that we all wanted again, but it was a good point. We are going to move on, previewing the West Ham game, and we're also going to look at the article today that says that Everton may be looking to keep Dele Alli at the club if they can make a deal done, and we're going to have some more socials. Before we do, anyone who's interested in selling their property in the city at the minute, it's only going to cost you £497 all in with our new sponsors, Tick Property. Adverts, floor plans, photos, free valuation. Instagram is Tick Property Group, also linked in our description below. Big hello to our sponsors at Tick Property Group, and as you saw at the start of the show, big hello and thank you to our long-time sponsors, Globe Gas and Heating. Some great offers over on Globe Gas and Heating as well. Link is on our socials, which is at Across the Park PC. Don't want to sell you too much more, but the lights have got to stay on. We've got an affiliate. Manscaped are back with the podcast. Anyone who knows Manscaped, I wanted Gary here to do an unboxing. Didn't quite get him in, Colin. We're going to wait for next week. Judgy is going to do an unboxing. If date night is coming up, all I'm saying is no one likes a George W. Sort yourself out. Get over to Manscaped, get a product and quote Across the Park in the checkout for a discount on the boys. Carl, I woke up this morning and I thought Dele Alli was not on my mind. He wasn't in my plans for the podcast. He hasn't even been attending Everton games. He's been attending Tottenham games, and I've of the opinion that he's being phased out. And God love him, what he's been through. I won't hold that against him. Go and be happy, but it's not quite worked. I then seen an article today that Everton are planning to meet as representatives, and look to keep Dele Alli around next season. Now, Paddy Boylan, who wrote the article in The Athletic, has stated that it's not quite there and there's hoops to jump through. If we renew his contract, then that apparently triggers money to Tottenham. I don't know where that leaves this £20 million clause. There's a lot. There's a lot on the table, a lot of moving parts. But despite him not featuring this season, do you see a future? Do you see Dele Alli in the Everton squad next season?
I don't, if I'm honest. I don't. I think it'd be tough for him. I think he's probably not the right type of player for us to have at this moment in time, personally. If it's in a deal that the club can't refuse, I don't know what that might look like.
A pay-as-you-play kind of thing? Or?
Yeah, I would say so, short-term pay-as-you-play, maybe. But with finances being so tight as they are, we need to look at players who are going to play regularly, week in, week out, in the gaps in the areas that we've got. And I still think you'll see a bit of movement in the summer anyway with the likes of Gomez and other players. We've got to replace them players with ones who are younger. I wouldn't say so much, injury-free, but, younger players, aspiring players, for me, who are going to make an impact on the team to get us to that next level of maybe playing football in a different way, being more utilised across the different systems that he wants to play. I just don't see it with Dele Alli, and the reason being is because the period he's out of football. Not so much to do with his issues, but we just haven't seen enough of him. If you roll back 4 or 5 years ago when Dele Alli was there on a free, you'd bite your hand off. But he's 4 or 5 years older now, and he hasn't had much game time. So if it's it's sort of a free scenario where it's pay as you play and stuff like that. Because I think he probably owes the club a little bit of loyalty there as well, for me.
The article alludes to that. The article is over on The Athletic, and it alludes to Dele's appreciative of what the club have done for him, and he wants to be an Everton player. He wants to play in the Premier League and help Everton. There's a little bit of that in the article. So maybe, like you said, there may be some sort of pay-as-you-play. Like right now, he's getting paid a lot of money to not play, which hurts us. If that can be rectified and you'll get a lot of money when you're helping the football club, then maybe. But
I think, if you're looking, it's two ways to look at it. Emotionally, because if he's saying he wants to give us something back, fantastic. More players should have that mentality towards it anyway. But from a financial point of view, I just don't know whether it's going to make sense. I really don't. I mean, we probably would have been better keeping Townsend this year as well then, on something similar, without letting him go. I think, like you're saying, there's a long way to go with it. There is speculation on it. If he comes with the right mentality and wanting to be playing, not being in the squad, but playing, he wants to. Where does he see himself in the team? Is he Decore's replacement? Fighting for minutes with him, then fine. But I think we've got to see something first before we commit to something like that. From a player, with his background.
It's almost like the perfect scenario here would be that Everton stay up with a number of games to go, and he can feature in them games where the pressure isn't really on, and he can have a bit of freedom, test his fitness levels and stuff. And if you keep Dele Alli, if Dele Alli is part of it next season, then for me, we have to see him. We can't. If it's a pay-as-you-play and financially we're not being hurt by not playing him. To me, I want to play. If he's there, he's got to do something similar to what Ross Barkley's doing at Luton. He's got to come in and say, maybe I'm not what I was, but I'm going to help and I'm going to impact and I'm going to really contribute here. Unless we can get him fit, is what I'm getting to. Unless he gets fit, then I wouldn't take another gamble on him.
Yeah, and look, the only thing that sits in the back of my mind, which is like the emotional bit, saying, give him a go, because he was the game changer against Palace.
Yeah.
And if we see that week in, week out, or at least for 60-70% of the games he plays in, then you'll buy into it. You've got to strip this right back to what we want as a fan base as well. We want players who are going to, put effort in. We haven't seen that from a couple of teams over the last few seasons. For me personally, that's the foundation of what we want from our players. He doesn't demonstrate that previously from where he's been personally for me. But if he's willing to push himself, prove himself, to the manager that he can fit in, and with this way we want to see our players play, and buy into that, and that's this club bit coming together again, then why not? But it's got to be a right deal for the club, for me.
Yeah, fair.
Fans love him, and he's the bit what Gary's saying about, if there's one player who could change a game in a certain area of the pitch, he's the player.
A home game where you're drawing, and maybe you haven't trusted Dele to start the game, you would certainly be, the crowd would certainly be chanting for Dele to come on. You've got to get him there.
Absolutely.
He can't be in the Alex Young lounge. He's got to be in the squad. You know what I mean? And
because obviously he's been prevented from playing. That's the way I see it at the minute. For whatever reason, financial. Or I don't know. He
broke down again, didn't he, with an injury? He's broke down again apparently, and that's what I'm trying to get at. You're like, you've got to get him fit.
Yeah.
In pre-season, he came back, didn't he? And we all seen the really emotional interview he's done with Gary Neville. and the club released a statement, the manager came out, and I think everybody just wanted to see him on the pitch. I think even opposition fans were saying, I'd love to see Dele Alli have a good season for Everton.
Yeah.
He can't come back in pre-season, still not be ready. If that's the case, you've got to go and go to Saudi
absolutely,
or something.
Yeah. Well, I think he's just got to he's finding himself again, and he's just got to get somewhere where he's going to enjoy football. But you know, I think Sean Dyche has done a great job with him. You know, from looking outside in, he's supporting him. You know, he's keeping him involved in the group. You know, he's not disregarding him in any way, because that can quite easily be seen as a distraction for the rest of the group. So fair play to Dyche. For me, he's managed them well, and even listening to Townsend's interview recently about when he was released off Everton, when he was at Everton when Dyche come in, you know, he talked about him rather than the football, you know, mentally. So he'd have a good manager under him to manage him in the right way, you know. But again, it's on the pitch, isn't it? We need to see it on the pitch as well as, you know, is he part of the group? Does he want to develop? Does he want to improve? You know, and it could be a bit of a rough diamond, but it's a big gamble.
It would be a big gamble. The West Ham game coming up, Colin, Saturday at Goodison. Before we got these 4 points back, I would be minded to say it was almost a must-win, really, because Luton aren't going away. Look, I'll put my neck on the line here. Sheffield United and Burnley are gone. I'll go up and say they're gone. They're not catching no one, unless Forest and Everton get penalised heftily again. But whilst Luton are still putting results together, Everton have to start winning games. This points buffet, it doesn't make me think that we obviously don't need to win the game anymore. And it's horrible to say, but I think there's less pressure on us winning now, and I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing.
No, I think, like I said earlier on, you know, Patrick Boyle mentioned this about like this vulnerable breathing space. That's the way I feel with it. I honestly think we've got to change mindset as a fan base as well for Saturday, to look at that game and say, look, poor touch, bad touch, you know, bad cross, whatever. It's just a constant sort of behind the team attitude. You know, the way we were in that run into the last couple of games at Goodison, every home game became like a bit of a, you know, not a party carnival atmosphere, but they got behind the team. You know, and I think Dyche and the club need to play a little bit on that moving forward for the next couple of games, because this next run of games, this next 3 or 4 games are huge, because that could be the difference about breaking away from certain teams who are down there, looking at what fixtures they've got. But Jekyll and Hyde results, aren't they? You know, I fear a West Ham rebounding again coming Saturday, because they'll probably look at, they're a little bit inconsistent with results, win one, lose one, draw one, a little bit similar to us, you know, and the pressure's on us a little bit Saturday to get a result. I think that's the way the fans will look at it. But yeah, if we get 3 points and we get behind the team in the right way, you know, not being negative over the ball going out in the first 5 minutes. You hear it, you feel the tension around you in the stadium. I think I'm flipping it the other way for the result. What I think it's more about how we react as fans on Saturday to get behind the team, because as most players will tell you, Goodison's been a terrible place for them to play, you know, for the last couple of seasons. And I think we've got to change mentality now moving forward as a fan base and pull on the good things rather than the negative things, because we know what they are. You know, we know what's going to limit us as a team on Saturday. And I think we also need to buy into what Dyche is doing. We're not going to come out and outplay people. We're not going to be flowing counter-attacking. We've got a bit of a plan first 70 minutes to sit in and play more counter. You know, break things up from a midfield point of view. And we know that, so don't get frustrated with it. Just get behind it, because I think that's where West Ham will come unstuck, is when they've missed either, you know, they're not creating, then the pressure falls back onto them then. You know, within the game, and they become playing at the London Stadium. The games I've watched recently, they're a bit nervy, you know, as a team, and you can hear it.
They're fans of turns,
you can hear them in the background. So it'll be a bit of breath of fresh air for them playing away. But I still think the vulnerabilities with them are, you know, they'll probably come out, keep good possession first 15 minutes to 20 minutes. We just got to sit in and be patient and then build in the game. But the fan base has got to get behind it.
I wouldn't mind, excuse me, West Ham coming out and going for us. Because the Palace game 2 weeks ago, Goodison, they didn't come out for us. And we didn't go out for them. And it was just, I was listening to TalkSport. Adrian Durham done the game for TalkSport, and he said the first half was one of the worst first halves he's ever seen. So with this Everton's, the way we set up, and you're right in how you've just described it, we sort of need West Ham to be brave, don't we? And say, do you know what, we're going to actually put our 2 fullbacks on you, and we're going to work on the halfway line, and we're going to press high, and that might give us. But I think you're spot on what you said. I think the fans I think we've seen this system long enough now, so we've got to get behind it.
Yeah.
He's not going to throw cautions to wins on Saturday. He didn't throw cautions to wins Bournemouth the last game of the season. He kept a plan. We went into half-time in that Bournemouth game, we were down. And he kept the plan, I think you're right, we've got to get behind the team. We're hoping to have a West Ham fan on the channel to talk a bit more. In the event that we don't, we'll just cover West Ham. I don't know why they're unhappy then, fans, you know. I can, if I take it back to when I was watching an Everton team finish 7th, and I was frustrated that Moyes never went for 6th, is it that? Because I don't think he's done a bad job there.
It's just styles, isn't it? Styles of football. I mean,
it's not easy on the eye, kind of thing.
I think that's all it is. And I think as fans, we've become a little bit, for me, too used to watching the likes of Man City, the way they play. Well, not everyone's going to play that way. You know, we were all in awe of Barcelona when he was there and how they played, and everyone tries to copy it. Well, it doesn't work. We don't have, all players are not set like they are.
Yeah.
What he's done really well is chose a system and built players around the system, and he's got the right type of players in it. I think Dyche has done the same with Everton. He's building the system to get the right type of players in to then maybe, you know, evolve it. But things are going to take time with it. And the way I look at West Ham is, you know, you just won the conference, you know, playing the way he played.
Yeah.
You know, if you want it to evolve, it means getting a new manager in. But you know what the risk is then then you become more vulnerable. And I think what Moyes fell foul of this year is trying to adapt the way he plays a little bit more, becoming more open. And as results of being mixed, he's conceding more goals. He's conceding from set pieces, which is not a very Moyes team, is it?
Yeah, it's true. You know, he had to bite back, didn't he? Did you see his press conference through the week? It was sort of like a mic drop. At the end, he said, you can find more attractive styles of manager who play, but I'll win more than them.
Absolutely. You know, and it's not pretty, you know what I mean? And I'm seeing similarities with Eddie Howe at the moment. You know, it is fast-paced, pressurised footy. It's kind of died off since they've come out of Europe, but I know he's had a lot of injuries, but if you remember him with Bournemouth at home, they were really fast-paced on you, quick, and they swamped you, but away from home, they really struggled to have that style of play. And for me, it just comes down to types of managers and styles of playing. The way football generally is evolving. So, you know, you're hearing like, well, there's teams in League 2 playing better football. Yeah, but they're in League 2. You know, the quality of players, if you played League 2 teams every week, you'd be top of the league. If you're a Prem team, my opinion. But it just comes down to styles. And I think West Ham, traditionally, what they've had, similar to Everton, they've probably had a period of success where they've done something really well, played really well, maybe like us back in the 80s, I don't know, and then that's what we cling to, and they're clinging back to, you know, it's not the West Ham way. Well, you're higher up in the league, you've just been successful in conference, you know, European football. I mean, if it was flip the scenario now, I'd take it in a heartbeat.
100%. But put a trophy in that cabinet, you'd be an Everton legend, absolutely, no matter who you were. Got a couple of socials to get to before we go, Cole, but just before we get on to those, prediction for Saturday for West Ham, fancy Everton?
Yeah, I do, 2-1.
2-1,
yeah. I'm hoping we soak the pressure up early doors from them and frustrate them, because I think they're probably, you know, out of, you know, Kudus will be the one for me. It'll be dangerous. But I think they'll probably play more for set pieces. They'll keep a lot of possession mid sort of like area of the pitch. But I think what they're struggling at the minute with is creating, you know, and Bowen will probably be, you know, the one that will cause us a bit of problem, you know, in behind the line. But I'm 2-1 Everton. I'm hoping that the fans get behind them and give them that lift. And, you know, the chances we do create, we take. You know, because I think Calvert-Lewin's due a goal or two in a game, and I'm hoping that he gets on the score sheet Saturday.
Be nice. Look, I'll go with you. I was thinking 1-0 or 2-0, but then you mentioned Bowen, who always gets us. Yeah. So let's just go into that 1-0 down already. We have to score 2 goals. I'll go with you 2-1, and I'd love the perfect day for me. Was obviously with Bowen not to score, but in this scenario, the perfect thing to happen would be a Dominic Calvert-Lewin winner at the street ends.
Yeah.
Don't do it late because I can't bear it, but just if Lewin gets the winner and he you know, gets subbed off to a massive ovation and then that monkey's off his back and we can move into, you know, more nervous games, which I'm sure we'll get to in March. But some socials called, we've covered Dyche a lot, but I just wanted to put a few more on there. Pablo on Twitter, he's put, this is the longest run without a win that I can remember. I think the football is poor. We don't have any creativity. We've got a striker who's not scoring. It's a lot. But do you actually think this all needs addressing in the summer? Can you address all that in the summer?
I think you can you? I think he's done his best up to now. You can't keep pointing the finger at Dyche. I think I've said it a lot over the last hour or so. For me, he's doing the best with what he's got. You know, and he makes some good points. Creativity, well, there's no creative players in there. So he's fine-tuning them to be really hard to beat. You know, the pressing team, but they don't keep the ball well enough. So he's highlighting some key points, but again, I think for me, he's alluding to some results that we either haven't had or we struggle to get. But we've still chipped away at picking a few points up on the board, draws, you know. And again, for me, it's always going in with that mentality: just don't lose, pick points up, you know. And I think if you go with that foresight, they can only try to improve the points that message is pointing out there around creativity. Just confidence, isn't it? You get results, and he's right. You know, long run without a win, but you know, confidence breeds results for me, and the other way around, results breed confidence in the group. So let's hope Saturday brings a bit of a change in the wind for us.
I don't know. I get what he's saying in relation to, can we address bringing goals into the team, which I assume is what you mean, Pablo. I don't think you mean address the manager. I think he's saying, can we get goals in? They cost money. And we've seen it. And we've got a question here. Chris on Twitter, and this links in perfectly. What do you lads make of the job Kevin Thelwell is doing? I've no doubt he's working under severe restrictions, but the attacking signings he's making leave a lot to be desired. So the attacking signings, I imagine, are Danjuma, Beto, Chimiti. And they haven't really contributed.
But I guess when you look at the likes of those signings, it's just realigning what the club's ambitions are with players moving forward with the managers, and then better understanding what they can do and what they need. You don't want to end up with a Chelsea situation where you don't know what players you're signing. It's just go and coach them. You know, that's not going to do us any favours. We're not in that. We can't be in that mindset of when we're signing players. But I
think the structure of the deals impacts what he's doing, because the Beto and the Chimiti ones, I don't know this to be gospel, but enough people in the know have said that the biggest payments were not made when we signed them. The biggest payments are to follow, and that suits Everton's 23-24 PSR.
Yeah, and again, you're right, but listen, we've paid inflated prices for average players over the last couple of years. So, you know, I think he's made improvements. Is it the right level of improvement? Well, time's going to tell. You know, for me, and not being able to sign players in the last two transfer windows, you know, and I'm keeping some of the best assets that we've got. Yeah. I think he's done a good job up to now, from what I can see. But if you're fighting with your arms behind your back, it's not going to be a fair fight, is it? Yeah. And that's exactly what we've had last two transfer windows. He's had to depend on what he's got. So it's no secret we're not seeing a big difference in the way we play, because he can't bring players in to affect that. Yeah,
and there's a big opportunity this summer to maybe, if you get an Andre Gomez off the books and you get a Dele off the books, and I think Ashley Young, possibly Seamus Coleman, can that money somehow be invested in getting a goal scorer? The scouting team have got to get it right, because you can't go and buy another St. Tosin and let him leave for nothing. You can't go and buy another Theo Walcott and let him leave for nothing. Yannick Bolasie, that is put us where we are in relation to PSR and all the problems where it's fudged the books and it doesn't look like it's been, you know, there's no plan to it. I would like to think that if we get the money in the summer somehow, that there's someone there that they've identified.
Personally, myself, Mills, I don't think it's the striker we need to be worried about at the minute. It's the midfielders.
Okay.
Yeah,
attacking midfielder?
I think so, yeah. I think wingers, more importantly for me, to create them. Because I look at quality that comes in the box now. It's not the best. I'd probably say Jack Harrison's probably the best, you know, whipping crosses in, but he's on loan.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to replace him at the end of the year. So the Gnotto one, which was, you know, quite prominent in the last few transfer windows, you can see he's trying to buy those attacking type of players in wide areas, and I can see that that's where he's trying to create his goals for them, and maybe an attacking midfielder. So I think you'll judge probably them two on the next two transfer windows, the manager and sporting director, I think, to kind of see what it is they're actually trying to do, because again, it's going to take time. We might get lucky, player that's the ground running and comes in and does really well. But they're always going to have a dip. You know, every player has a dip in performance, you know, and it's whether Dice rotates them well enough, you know, to delay that or manage that properly. Yeah. But I think it's going to be tough. I think we still need to look at getting out, players out who are not, who are not, you know, featuring enough before we can start looking at bringing what's right for us. But I do believe that now that the strategy they have in place now is far more, for me, reassuring than that scattergun approach that they've had for the last few years of just throwing as much crap at the wall to see what sticks. Yeah. But the 5 number 10s, that, you know, even now you look back at it now, you think, where did that come from? How was that even allowed to happen?
Did you hear Jagielka on TalkSport the other week? So they had Jagielka on TalkSport and he was talking about, they asked him a very simple question, like, how have Everton spent so much money in Goria? And that's the question that we ask. And it was really interesting to hear him break it down. And he alluded to that number 10 summer where you brought a number of them in. And he never named them, but the way he talked about it, he was talking about those players. And he said, look, there was one season we finished in Europe. And we came back in the summer. And we had 4 players for one position. And we had no other players for anywhere else. I think he means Klaas and Sigurdsson, Rooney, Vlasic. 4 number 10s. And he said, what happened then when that manager's idea didn't work and they sacked that manager in October? The caretaker couldn't get it any better. They got rid of the caretaker and brought someone else in. And he then wanted wingers. So he went and signed wingers, and the number 10 sit on the bench. No one wants to buy the number 10s because they're flopped. And he was like, wow, he broke it down so, like, basic. It's like, how could no one foresee that we shouldn't have bought for number 10s? Yeah. It's mad.
And I think that just brings down to the fact that, you know, how inexperienced the owner was to get a club from where they were to that level, because we were pushing Champions League at that time, European football.
Koeman just got us into Europe, hadn't he?
But for me, when he got us there, it was almost like, well, we brought a sporting director in who didn't even know him at the time, and you think, well, that doesn't work. Yeah. So we had a really good squad when Koeman come in, and we sold all the best assets off. Yeah. So I hate this conversation around you spent £500 million. Well, we sold near enough that, and the ones that we brought in, we've let go again. It hasn't worked. But other clubs have done that, but not come under the microscope. Look at Man United.
Yeah, I know.
You know, Jesus Christ, they could have had like 4 or 5 teams on top of what we've bought. But because we didn't have, it's the first time we've been exposed to that kind of money since in my time. It hasn't gone well. So I think the club are learning. They need to build a structure now around. We're looking at these types of players with these types of contracts for this value, and they have a sell-on value. Yeah. And so we get to that next level, and then we can look at different types of players. But I think we need to start looking at more early 20s, hungry players. You know, maybe you know, some of the players who were pushing the higher echelons of Championship and maybe some European football.
You've got a couple in the squad already, haven't you? You've got James Garner. Yeah. You've got Amadou Onana. I think them two would get a sell-on. Jared Branthwaite would definitely get a sell-on. So it's going to take a lot. It's going to take time, but I can sort of see to bring Branthwaite back and to identify Onana and James Garner. I think you're right in what I think that's the model they're trying to do now. There's a sell-on as well. It's not just when we signed Yannick Bolasie, Michael Keane, Gylfi Sigurdsson. I doubt anyone. And if they did, I'm really worried, thought that those 3 players had a sell-on. They thought that they'd improve the Everton team to maybe keep us in Europe for 2 years, and then we could afford to replace them and let them.
Ashley Williams was the biggest
one. Ashley Williams, another one,
you know, he just come in and just, you know, failed massively. Yeah. You know what I mean? And when you're bringing so many, and Jags raised the point there, when you've played in a team and there's like 4 or 5 different players in there, it's a broken environment. And I think what Dyche is trying to build now is like, you know, an environment that works for the club. It's not where he wants it, but he's got to stabilise it to a point so that, well, what type of players do we want as a club? Yeah. And I think he understands the fans. He's changed them to be more hard working. He's getting there with that journey. And I think you're seeing that with certain players he's bringing in, or he's looking to bring in. Maybe not so much with the strikers, because I don't think he's fixed the midfield properly. So you're not seeing the best. That's what I was saying with Beto and Gomez. I think you'll see a different striker. I think once you get through the ball play through to someone who can find a pass, rather than just banging it in and letting them chase a ball, you'll see a different striker. Chimiti's the same. You see the way they move off the ball. They're making them runs. It's not a chasing the ball run. It's finding that ball through the line. And they play slightly different. So I think once he finds out whether he's keeping Gomez or he places him with a more you know, a ball playing attacking midfielder, then we'll see it. But I still think the likes of Gomez has got to go for the benefit of the club. He's got to bring in someone younger who's a little bit more hungry, you know, early sort of 20s, and wants to aspire and develop on. But any of them we bring in, we risk losing. But I think we've got to go back to look, we're a selling club as well as a buying club. You know what I mean?
And even at the biggest clubs in the world, if you look at the money City bring in when they sell players, it's like they're not selling them for buttons. Yeah. Like they sold 3 or 4 to Arsenal, and it took Arsenal to the point of PSR themselves because City were no mugs in selling. And do you know what? I'll get hammered for this. I can see in a scenario where Luton go down, I can see Barkley come back in the summer. I can just see it. Yeah. Not to say I really, really want it, but I can just see that. And a free transfer, and we've seen that he's still a good Premier League player. Can you give him a 2-year contract? I can see it.
Unbelievable, absolutely. But it's up to him. You know, I think he's got to build bridges with the fans as much as the fans have got to build them with him. And this is the bit about, you know, fan base. The whole situation we've come out of and we're probably moving back into. I think we've underestimated the opportunity we had last year, for me, about coming together as a fan base. It's almost like you've got to isolate yourself around your team, and then whatever noise comes from it does, but we're just all behind the team. But I still feel it at Goodison. It's a tense atmosphere. You know, I listen to some of the lads around. I've got a good lad who sits by me, Morgo, and you know, he's been and watched Everton home and away all his life. You know, he's seen different levels of football, but I still think that inconsistency in fans, like, you know, this is what we are. You know, a sort of like analogy of like, look, this is what we are. We've got to get behind it. It's no good thinking that, you know, we're going to be, you know, outplaying people, you know, in final thirds and whipping, you know, getting 1v1s and taking people on and whipping them. It's not going to happen. Yeah. So get behind them. And I think if the atmosphere changes to that, there's a mentality shift, I think, that's got to happen with the fans to support the players. And that'll ultimately, for me, it'll benefit recruitment as well. Because what players are going to come to an hostile home environment to play? Yeah. It's like, I think West Ham will struggle. If they lose Moyes, I think they'll struggle with the fan base because the way the fans can turn on them. United have done it with a couple of managers. Look at the effect it's had on players like Maguire. You know, he can't get in the team. Yeah. You know, and he's one of those players you look at, you're saying about selling value. No. You know, there's not many who's going to pay decent money for him.
No,
you know.
Right.
But I think for the likes of us, you know, I think the strategy over the next 2 transfer windows will tell us a lot about where we're going as a club, what type of ownership we have, and how they want to invest in players, and what their player pathway looks like, you know, for us as a club.
No, look, I think it's a good way to end the podcast. We had loads to discuss. We had the appeal, we had the few questions, we had the Brighton and the West Ham fixtures. Before you go, Colin, I know you want to say something about one of your friends on the podcast.
Yeah, there's a good friend of mine, family friend as well, Chris Bandel. Chris has unfortunately been diagnosed with leukemia recently. I had the pleasure of working with Chris back at Everton as an academy player some time ago. But, you know, we just wanted to sort of put a message out there to Chris, Dave, Dan and the rest of the family, like, just to say, like, we're all behind him. He's a boss lad, top player, top attitude. Just unfortunately, you know, he's obviously become ill with that illness, and really just wanted to say to him, look, we're all behind him. You know, he's, again, just a top lad, and I'm absolutely gutted for him, but, you know, made up that everyone's come round him at a time where he needs them all, just to give him that support he needs. Yeah,
no, boss message. Pass on our love and our best. Yeah. If the family needs anything that the podcast can do, we're open to it, whether it's any sort of fundraising. But what I do want to say is just tell him when he gets better, he's got to come on the Cost Park podcast.
Yeah, all right? I'll tell him. I'll absolutely tell him that, definitely.
Happy days. Col, thanks for joining us
no problem.
This week. Everyone, thanks very much for watching. We've gone a bit long, but there was lots to talk about this week. Feeling a little bit better about things. There's another fight to come. We'll be covering it the whole way. Please like, share and subscribe this video. As always, up them toffees.